Yeah, you staged it! You staged it! Staged it! You staged it! Child abuser!
This from Hev, who says Starmer is just working at what he wants, sod the country and everyone else. He is a sneaky, backstabbing traitor to the British. Keir Starmer should be called Darth Utrendus, master of gradual betrayal and shadow deals, says Tanya.
Keir Starmer stepped into the spotlight as if expecting applause. Instead, silence cracked into hostility. The air turned sharp. No warm greetings, no polite reception. The crowd was braced for battle. Boos thundered before he could even open his mouth. This wasn't the usual tug-of-war between critics and backers. Something deeper was boiling. It was raw. It was personal. What began as scattered jeers swelled into a roar that filled the space. The people weren't showing disappointment. They were unleashing fury. Starmer pressed on, trying to look steady, but his words were swallowed by the noise, arms crossed tight, heads shook in disgust. Voices hurled at him with no pause, no restraint. It didn't feel like politics anymore. It was rejection in its purest form. As chants of shame and "you broke it" rose from every corner, the message was brutal and undeniable. He had lost them completely. So the question lingers. How did it spiral here? How did the man who vowed to restore Labour end up facing a sea of people demanding nothing but his downfall? The answer lies in retracing the unravelling, beginning with that moment Starmer realised the crowd was already against him.
I came here to speak to this man, not your security. You have failed me.
Thank you. Okay.
I've been a Labour voter my entire life. You have failed to be the opposition. You have failed to ask whether lockdown was functioning.
Just behind. Can we just
Do you understand?
Can we go in?
Thousands of people have died because you have failed to do your job and ask the real questions. Well, I am telling you now, and I hope this goes out, you have failed this country. You have.
They've been on the front line.
From the instant Starmer walked onto the stage, the mood felt uneasy. These were Labour loyalists filling the room, yet the energy didn't match the setting. Instead of the expected applause, or at least polite anticipation, he was met with a wall of quiet. Faces stayed still, posture rigid, not a single spark of enthusiasm in sight. He pushed ahead anyway, starting with his usual talking points on the economy, fiscal discipline, steady growth, Labour's vision for stability. But as the words left his mouth, they landed flat. The room stayed cold. Expressions didn't shift. The silence wasn't supportive. It was heavy, almost suffocating. When he pivoted to Brexit, the cracks widened. His carefully measured tone, meant to soothe both sides, sounded indecisive instead. What he hoped would sound balanced came across as vague. The audience caught it instantly. In the back, people exchanged knowing glances. Others folded their arms, leaning back in their chairs. A quiet tension spread through the hall, growing heavier by the second. And then came the breaking point. Starmer moved into foreign policy. On the issue of Israel and Gaza, he dismissed a ceasefire as unrealistic. That single stance flipped the room from uneasy silence into something sharper, something ready to erupt.
You child abuser! Where's Jimmy Savile? Where's Jimmy Savile? Get back!
That was the moment the audience finally broke their silence, and it wasn't applause they offered, it was sharp rejection. The change hit instantly. All the quiet frustration that had been simmering beneath the surface erupted in full view, and Starmer stood squarely in its path. At first, it sounded like scattered whispers, the kind of noise a speaker might brush aside. But those whispers grew into a wave. A single boo rang out, then another, then a cascade that filled the hall. Suddenly, this wasn't a crowd listening to a leader. It was a crowd turning on one. Starmer hesitated, the pause hanging for a beat as if he was deciding whether to confront it or keep going. He pressed on, speaking louder, trying to force authority back into the room. But the more he pushed, the more resistance surged back at him. The shift was complete. Skepticism had hardened into hostility. Shouts cut through his sentences. A woman in the front row stood and demanded answers on healthcare and child services, her voice slicing through the auditorium. Others followed, emboldened by her defiance. What had started as quiet disapproval became a direct face-to-face rebellion unfolding right in front of him.
Anyone remember voting for this?
Fucking cunt. See through all your lies, you're a cunt in disguise. Keir Starmer.
What about you, Richie?
Well, actually, Clark, no, we did not sign up to this because we believe in having our own sovereignty, our own sovereign parliament, not giving it to a foreign power, so it's a load of bollocks.
And you, Jojo, do you remember this being on any mandates?
Oh my god, of course I don't remember anything like this, Clark. The man is so fucking bent.
The interruptions didn't let up. They came steady, deliberate, and full of purpose. Each attempt Starmer made to press forward only pushed the audience further away. They weren't waiting for a polite Q&A session. Their verdict was already written. They rejected what he was saying. The room was gone. The discontent boiled over. These weren't casual critics. They were Labour supporters, people who once championed his rise. Now they stood firmly against him. Frustration had hardened into open defiance. Then a chant began to roll through the hall. Not violent, but unstoppable. We are in crisis. The words hit like a drumbeat, echoing again and again until they drowned out his speech. Each repetition grew heavier, voices layering into a single demand. Some shouted for change, others called for answers. A few walked out altogether, leaving in quiet disgust. Behind him, even Labour MPs shifted uncomfortably. One fixed his eyes on his notes, but never lifted a pen. Another scrawled aimlessly on her phone, avoiding the sight of the crowd. Their faces told the story. This was a disaster, and none of them knew how to stop it.
True democracy is citizen-led. Politics needs an update. We demand a people's house. We demand a people's house. We are in crisis. We are in crisis. Our whole future is deafening.
As rows of supporters rose from their seats and filed out, the weight of the moment became impossible to deny. Starmer tried to lift his voice above the noise, but it didn't matter anymore. His words had been drowned out, and the audience was gone, both in body and in spirit. In the days that followed, the fallout spread quickly. For many in Labour's base, that night wasn't an isolated stumble. It was confirmation of a suspicion they had carried for months, that Starmer no longer spoke for them. A leader once praised for his steadiness now seemed distant, cautious and unsure. Brexit remains one of his deepest wounds. In 2016, he was firmly in the Remain camp, even calling for a second referendum to overturn the result. Today, he sidesteps the issue entirely, urging Britain to move on. But voters haven't moved on. They remain divided, and his silence has only managed to alienate both camps. To leave voters, he abandoned their victory. To Remainers, he betrayed their fight. Instead of bridging the divide, his neutrality has deepened it. The Southport eruption wasn't just about Gaza or the economy. It was a culmination of months of built-up distrust. Supporters weren't reacting to one misstep. They were responding to a pattern. A leader who once promised clarity now seems to specialise in saying as little as possible, terrified of offending either side. That same hesitation shows up across his agenda. His economic vision, wrapped in talk of fiscal discipline and balanced budgets, is pitched as sensible and future-ready. Yet to many in Labour's heartlands, it feels eerily close to conservative orthodoxy. Instead of renewal, it looks like drift. On foreign policy, his stance on Gaza lit the fuse. Rejecting calls for a ceasefire didn't just stir debate, it ignited outrage. Grassroots members expected Labour to stand firmly for justice. Instead, Starmer sounded cold, calculated, unwilling to risk moral conviction for political gain. The discontent isn't confined to the public either. Inside Westminster, MPs are whispering. Some doubt openly whether he can carry Labour into the next election. Others are quietly sketching the outlines of a leadership challenge. The unease is spreading. And then came the Trump moment. For years, Starmer condemned him as reckless and dangerous. But recently he praised Trump's handling of certain global issues, even hinting at closer UK-US cooperation if Trump returns to power. To many in Labour, that was unforgivable. This was the very man the party had cast as a threat to democracy. Now their leaders seem to be softening. Supporters branded it betrayal. MPs were stunned into silence. In his bid to court the centre ground, Starmer is bleeding the party's soul. This isn't anger at a change of mind, it's anger at a loss of identity. Working class voters, lifelong members and activists alike are asking the same question. What does Labour stand for anymore? Its defenders argue it's all part of an electability strategy. But to many, it feels like the party's values are being traded away for poll numbers. Economic justice, social protection, courage in hard times. Those pillars are eroding with every cautious speech. Even his attempts to project toughness on security issues ring hollow. When he spoke about redefining terrorism laws to meet new threats, critics saw another vague gesture. Broad warnings, no concrete direction. Another sign of a leader more focused on optics than conviction. Labour's identity crisis is now impossible to hide. With each pivot, the message grows murkier. And in politics, murky doesn't inspire loyalty. It drives people away. The anger spilling across social media from Labour's grassroots tells the story. These aren't fair weather supporters. They're lifelong backers who feel abandoned. Inside the party, the tension is just as sharp. Senior figures are growing restless. Talk of leadership bids, once unthinkable, is now quietly circulating. The Southport backlash wasn't an outlier. It was the loudest alarm yet. What once looked like cautious strategy now feels like paralysis. Starmer, once branded as a steady hand, increasingly looks like a man trapped between who he wants to be and who his party demands he become. The Southport chaos wasn't just another rough night. It was a flashing red warning. Those boos, those walkouts, those chants, they came from his own people. That makes it all the more devastating. His team may spin it as an anomaly, but the truth is harder to escape. He is losing touch with the very base that carried him to power. This isn't a crisis born from one bad call. It's the slow erosion of trust. A party built on conviction now looks rudderless, drifting without a clear course. And unless something changes, the next wave of rebellion may not come from restless crowds. It may come from inside his own ranks. Starmer set out to unite Labour. Instead, he stands at the edge of open revolt. Southport was more than a warning shot. It was a turning point. The question is no longer whether he can win over voters, it's whether he can even keep his own party together. What do you think? Can he turn it around? Or are we witnessing the beginning of the end? Let us know in the comments. And for more no-spin breakdowns of Britain's political drama, keep watching. This story is far from finished.